You ever been in a perfectly normal conversation and then suddenly it just goes completely sideways? Or have you ever wondered why a little bit of simple feedback can feel like a massive personal attack? Well, it turns out there's a hidden code in our brain that kind of dictates these social reactions. Today, we're going to decode it with something called the SCARF model. So let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. On one side, you have a lion. That's a pretty clear physical threat, right? On the other side, you've got getting some critical feedback in front of your team. Now, logically, these are worlds apart. But here's the crazy thing. To the oldest part of your brain, the part that handles survival, they can trigger the exact same alarm bells. Both of them can signal a profound primal sense of danger.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? Why? Why does a social situation, maybe just a few words, have the power to create the same fight or flight response as a literal, life-threatening predator?
Well, the answer lies deep in our brain's ancient wiring. We're about to explore what you could call a fundamental social glitch in our evolutionary hardware.
So here's the glitch. Our brain's core operating system is ancient. It was designed for physical survival, back when lions were a real-world problem. The thing is, the software has never really been updated, so it treats social threats, like public criticism or feeling left out, with the same life or death intensity as a physical one. To your brain, that lion and that piece of feedback are processed in the exact same primitive region.
So what's the impact of this? This is the crucial part. When that threat switch gets flipped, our cognitive capacity is massively reduced. Our ability to make smart decisions, to solve complex problems, to work well with others, it just plummets. We literally become less intelligent, less creative, and a whole lot more defensive.
And this brings us to the SCARF model. I want you to think of it as the secret code, like the user manual for this threat and reward switch in our brains. It lays out the 5 key social triggers that our brain is constantly scanning for, the things that make us feel either safe and rewarded or threatened and ready to fight. So, this model was developed by David Rock, and it identifies 5 key areas that act like switches for that threat response: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And you get the acronym, right? SCARF. These are the core social needs our brain is always trying to protect. So let's break them down.
We're going to start with the first 2. And honestly, these are probably some of the most powerful and common triggers you're going to see every single day: status and certainty.
First up, we've got status. This is all about our relative importance to other people. It's our deep, primal need to feel valued, respected, and, competent in the eyes of our social group. It's all about where we fit in the pecking order.
And a status threat can be triggered by things that seem so minor, right? Like someone just dismissing your idea, or correcting you in public, or even something as simple as being left off a meeting invite. Each one of those little moments sends a huge signal to our primitive brain that says, hey, you are less important. Your position in the tribe is at risk. So here's a really powerful shift in perspective. The next time someone reacts really defensively, instead of just thinking, they're being so difficult, I want you to ask yourself, could their sense of status have just been threatened? This one little question, it changes everything. Okay, next up we have certainty. Our brains are basically prediction machines. They absolutely love patterns, and they use a ton of energy trying to figure out what's going to happen next. So certainty is that need for clarity, for predictability, so the brain can just kind of relax and conserve its resources.
When there's a lack of certainty, it creates a threat response. And think about it, this happens all the time. Unclear instructions, a sudden change of plans with zero explanation, not knowing the agenda for a meeting. All of these things create anxiety and make it almost impossible to focus because your brain is too busy trying to fill in all the blanks.
And this brings us to another great reframe. If someone seems anxious or maybe resistant to a new idea, maybe it's not that they lack motivation. Maybe they just need more certainty. They need the why explained, the steps laid out, a clear picture of what the future looks like.
All right, let's keep going. We'll move on to the final 3 domains and see how this all builds on itself. We're now decoding autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So autonomy, this is our need to have a sense of control and choice over our lives and our work. And you know what the biggest threat to this is? Micromanagement. Yeah. When we feel like we have no say, our brain perceives that lack of control as a major threat to our survival.
So when someone's pushing back or resisting, don't just see stubbornness. Try to see a brain that's fighting for a sense of autonomy. And the fix is actually pretty simple but so powerful. Offer choices instead of just giving commands.
Ask for their input. Let them have the steering wheel for their own tasks.
Next is relatedness. This is all about our brain deciding if someone is friend or foe. It's our really fundamental need to feel safe, trusted, and connected with other people. To feel like we belong to the tribe. When we feel isolated or rejected, it triggers a really strong threat response.
Think about that quiet person in the corner of a meeting. Our first instinct might be to label them as, disinterested or unengaged. But what if their silence is actually a signal of a relatedness threat? Maybe they just don't feel psychologically safe enough to speak up yet.
And finally, we have fairness. Our brains have this powerful, just built-in need for fair exchanges. In fact, neuroscience shows that when we perceive something as unfair, it can activate the same part of the brain that's associated with disgust. It's a really deep, gut-level reaction. So that really strong emotional reaction you might see when someone feels like the rules were applied inconsistently or that someone was showing favoritism, it's probably not an attitude problem, it's their brain's fairness alarm bells just ringing off the hook. They feel like a fundamental social contract has been broken. Okay, so we've decoded the 5 domains. Now for the big question, how do we actually use this stuff? This model isn't just theory, it's a super practical tool. Think of it as a social compass for navigating your interactions way more effectively.
And this is the single most important rule of all. SCARF is not for labeling people. It's not about saying, oh, he's a high-status person. No, it's a diagnostic tool for understanding what a person needs right now, in this moment, to feel safe and stay engaged.
And this right here is your practical compass. It's so simple. First, you observe a behavior, like a defensive reaction. Then you use SCARF to guess what the trigger might be. Defensiveness. That often points to a threat to status. And finally, you have a clear, constructive action you can take. You can acknowledge their point and maybe give feedback privately later. This lets you respond strategically instead of just, reacting.
This brings us to what might be the most powerful application of this whole model. There's this old idea that says, reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. SCARF isn't just a tool for understanding other people, it's also a mirror for understanding yourself. The moment you can spot your own threat triggers, you gain the power to choose how you respond.
So, my question to you is this. As you go through the rest of your day, which SCARF need are you going to notice? In yourself or in someone else? Because I'll tell you what, once you start seeing the world through this lens, you really can't unsee it.